Hello, I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for joining me. We begin in Spain, where polls have just closed in the first general election in 4 years. Turnout in the snap elections has been fairly high, 60.7%, compared to 51.2% back in 2016. Now, 5 national parties are for the first time competing for a share of power, with a notable resurgence of the far right after more than 40 years of being on the political fringe. Now, the far-right Vox party, which burst onto the scene in December, looks set to make an appearance in Parliament, with polls predicting that it could win over 10% of the vote, while opinion polls are showing outgoing Socialist Premier Pedro Sanchez will win, but without the necessary majority to govern alone. Now, throughout this election, women's rights have been a key campaigning topic, with fierce debate over gender-based violence, with street protests happening in Spain over the last few years on the issue.
There's this latent feeling that if the right-wing parties win, they could exert their power. But I stick to my position that not everything has to be so radical, and that there are always nuances. And that's how I think it should be.
Now to the US, where police are looking into a possible connection between yesterday's fatal shooting at a synagogue in California and a fire at a mosque nearby. Now, the shooting happened inside the Chabad synagogue in Poway, killing 1 woman and injuring 3 other people, including the rabbi, as worshippers marked the final day of the Jewish holiday of Passover. San Diego officials say 61-year-old Lori Gilbert Kay died at the scene as her husband, who's a doctor, tried to resuscitate her, with 2 men and an 8-year-old girl also in hospital. Now, that child is an Israeli girl whose family left Sderot in southern Israel 4 years ago due to the ongoing tensions in the region. A 19-year-old from San Diego has been detained over the shooting, and it's alleged John Earnest published an open letter outlining his white supremacist ideology. Now, this attack comes exactly 6 months after a terrorist killed 11 people at the Pittsburgh Tree of Life synagogue, the deadliest attack on the Jewish community in the history of the United States. President Donald Trump condemning the San Diego shooting, calling it a hate crime.
With respect to the synagogue in California near San Diego, and we're doing some very heavy research. We'll see what happens, what comes up. At this moment, it looks like a hate crime. But my deepest sympathies to all of those affected, and we'll get to the bottom of it. It looks like the person was apprehended, no more danger, and law enforcement's done a fantastic job. Fantastic job. Okay?
2 Syrian prisoners who sat in an Israeli jail for over a decade are returning home in what Israeli officials are calling a goodwill gesture to Russia after its assistance in delivering the remains of an IDF soldier from Syria. Now, despite Israeli laws forbidding such a move without government consent, I-24 News' Alec Pollard has more.
The return of the remains of IDF soldier Zachary Baumel to Israel 37 years after he went missing in action, turns out to be more than just a gesture of goodwill.
It's not a unilateral act. Israel has taken a decision which will take some time to be implemented to release a number of the Syrian citizens who are in Israeli jails.
That time has come quickly. Israel transferring 2 prisoners back to Syria less than a month after the return of Baumel. 57-year-old Zidan Tawil, a drug trafficker from the Syrian border town of Khadel, and 35-year-old Ahmed Khamis, captured in a planned terror attack against an IDF base back in 2005. A 2014 Israeli law decrees that all prisoner exchanges and releases must pass through government. But that law was bypassed thanks to the Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit, who authorized the deal, thus excluding Israel's government and security cabinet. The response from the AG:
due to the special circumstances, it has been decided that the law does not prevent the return of the prisoners.
Government authorities have declared the prisoner's return was not part of a deal for Baumel, but rather a gesture of goodwill to Russia. Perhaps with a goal in mind, to lay the groundwork with Russia for the return of the other 2 soldiers who went missing with Baumel in the Battle of Sultan Yaqub back in 1982, Yehuda Katz and Zvi Feldman. But the release of the two Syrian prisoners shows that in Israel's delicate relationship with Russia, all gifts that come out of the Kremlin come with a price. Alec Pollard, I-24 News.
Staying in the region, and Israel's Attorney General Avraham Mandelblit has told Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's lawyers to decide on a date for a hearing before May 10 regarding the corruption allegations hanging over him. Now, following the elections, which were held in Israel on April 9, it was widely reported in Israeli media that Netanyahu's lawyers are refusing to collect files that they had requested to be withheld for fear the sensitive information in them may be leaked and then go on to influence the election. A Palestinian man is dead after succumbing to his wounds after being shot by Israeli police following an alleged knife attack near the Tepuach Junction military checkpoint outside the West Bank city of Nablus earlier this month. Now, 20-year-old Omar Awi Yunus from the West Bank village of Siniria was critically injured after authorities opened fire on him after he reportedly charged at them with a knife as Jewish people marked the first day of Passover, a time when all border crossings into the West Bank were shut with entry and exit prohibited. Moving now to Iran, with the country's top general warning the Islamic Republic may close the vital shipping strait of Hormuz if it faces more hostility from the United States. Army Chief of Staff Mohammad Bagheri telling semi-official news outlet ISNA that we're not after closing the Strait of Hormuz, but if the hostility of enemies increases, we will be able to do so, adding that also if our oil does not go through the strait, then other countries' oil will certainly not cross the strait too. This after Washington announced on Monday that it's set to impose sanctions on countries such as India, China and Turkey, who continue to buy Iranian oil. 8 countries were initially given 6-month reprieves after the US reimposed sanctions on Iran following President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw from the 2015 nuclear accord. To Iraq now, where Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu met with his Iraqi counterpart Mohammed al-Hakam to discuss trade, border security and water resources. Now, the 2-day visit, which began today, will include stops in the autonomous Kurdish region and Iraq's main oil hub Basra. Turkey's expected to rebalance its oil supplies in the wake of the US announcement to end the sanction waivers that allow Turkey to import from Iran. Iraq is one of Turkey's leading suppliers of crude oil and plans to facilitate trade with Turkey. Now to Yemen, where 12 civilians, including a mother and her 4 children, are dead after 2 attacks by Houthi rebels in the government-controlled area of Jebel Habashi near Taiz over the weekend. According to both pro-government and rebel forces, Houthis launched a rocket toward the town, demolishing the family's home. In Dalah, which is east of Taiz, the Iranian-aligned Houthi rebels are accusing the Saudi-led coalition of striking 2 vehicles in Aoud, killing 7 civilians, including a child. Nearly 10,000 people have been killed, with more than 60,000 others wounded since the Saudi-led coalition intervened in the war back in March 2015. But human rights groups say that number is much higher. In Germany, a neo-Nazi party has failed in the country's highest court, trying to force a national broadcaster to show a campaign advertisement, with the Federal Constitutional Court upholding 2 rulings. The Constitutional Court issuing a statement saying that it's rejected the NPD's appeal, citing no grounds to think that the courts failed to uphold the plaintiff's freedom of speech. Fellow public broadcaster ARD refusing to show the ad, which was set to run until May 15. It says it was unaware of any legal challenge to the decision by the NPD. And we're going into a short break, but when we come back, we'll take a deeper look into the elections in Spain and tell you which party looks like it's gained traction. All of that after this. Stay with us.
Lesbos, Greece's third largest island, the picture of tranquility. Also epicenter to a global migration crisis and home to Europe's biggest refugee camp. Thousands have journeyed here escaping war, famine, poverty, and terror. Join I-24 News' Emily Rose for rare inside access, hearing from those who landed on these shores and those determining their future, plus the ones trying to make a difference. Lesbos, Island of Dreams, Island of Despair, starting April 29th, only on I-24 News.
Politics, economics, business, and technology. Get the real news and the real insight about what's happening around the world. Michelle McCory breaks down the top stories of the day from the Middle East to the U.S. Weeknights beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern.
41 nations, 41 acts, and 3 days of fierce competition. This May, thousands of music fans from around the globe will descend on Tel Aviv for the 64th annual Eurovision contest, with Israel hosting for the third time in 6 decades. Join I-24 News for complete live coverage inside the shows, the celebration, and the drama.
There's one thing the left and right can agree on. Spin is everywhere. From the halls of the Israeli parliament to the floor of Congress, with roundtables featuring politicians and movers and shakers debating the hot-button issues and tackling it head-on, we'll get beyond the headlines and expose the spin. Join me, Ami Kaufman, every Monday and Thursday on The Spin Room.
Watch The Spin Room, Mondays and Thursdays, 4:05 p.m. Eastern, only on I-24 News.
Thanks for staying with us. Let's go back now to Spain, where polls have just closed in the first general election in 4 years. Turnout for the snap elections has been fairly high, 60.7%, compared to 51.2% back in 2016. 5 national parties for the first time competing for a share of power, with a notable resurgence of the far right after more than 40 years of being on the political fringe. And now I'm joined by Natalia Matos, who's a journalist for the national Spanish media TV. Natalia, thank you so much. Tell me, we know that the polls have just closed. Are we seeing any information coming in from exit polls? And also, what's the very latest with voter turnout?
Well, what's known is that at 6 p.m. the participation was, as you said, of 60.7%, which is really high compared to last year. Also, Madrid has been the city with the most participation, with around 65%, followed by Catalonia with 64%, which we must have in mind that Catalonia right now is in a moment with this independence movement, which is kind of paralyzed for the moment, and with candidate of Esquerra Republicana, which is the left-wing political party, in prison and who has been obliged to do his campaign from prison. So there was this estimation of who would win these elections done by THIS, which is a Center of Sociologic Investigations, who's estimated that there would be around 78% of participation, and that it would be the Socialist Party of PSOE who would win these elections with around 29%. So the current president would still win these elections, but would not have enough votes to govern alone, followed by the Popular Party and Ciudadanos.
Okay, let's now talk about this Vox party and its leader, Santiago Abascal. Give us a bit of background there.
So this Abascal, this is the third political formation before Ciudadanos. They are a center-right political party in Spain, which have just were born, we could say, in December in Andalusia, where they got lots of votes. And its growth has sparked quite a protest and worries over increasing polarization in Spain, as they defend similar ideas and thoughts of former right-wing dictator General Francisco Franco. So the ruling of this far-right Vox party does have worries between the population of Spain.
Okay, so we've spoken about the right. Let's now go to the left, Podemos party. Tell me, how likely is it that it'll make up much of the government?
Well, for the moment, the estimation of Podemos is that it would get this 14% out of the 78% of participation if it was what would happen today. We should remember that they have had less visibility in media in these past weeks because of his paternity leave. He, as you know, Pablo Iglesias does have this informal appearance and does convey less solvency compared to the other political parties. And his speech does not really match the perception of his acts, as we have seen lately with some of his interviews, where, for example, he did defend being able, for example, politicians should live as everybody else and should be like more as a standard population of the streets, but they don't really match what they're saying. So it is known that they won't get the maximum percentage as they did estimate.
Okay, Natalia Matos there in Spain. Really appreciate the update. Thank you. Let's go now to the US, where police are looking into a possible connection between yesterday's fatal shooting at a synagogue in California and a fire at a mosque nearby. The shooting happened inside the Chabad synagogue in Poway, killing one woman and injuring 3 other people, including the rabbi, as worshippers marked the final day of the Jewish holiday of Passover. And for more on this story, let's now go to our senior national correspondent, Michael Shaw, who is standing by in California there. Michael, thanks so much for your time. Firstly, tell me, what more do we know about this person that the police have taken in and where the authorities, how they're investigating this?
Well, they're investigating by piecing together what radicalized this man, Sarah. It's John Ernest. He's 19, just a few weeks shy of his 20th birthday. He's a nursing student at Cal State San Marcos, a school here that reports that he was a fine student. But the police are looking into what took him from being a member of a tight-knit family doing well in school to someone who could walk into a Chabad temple here, the one just over my shoulder here, on Passover, like you said, and start firing shots from an assault weapon. That's what they're trying to figure out now. Again, there's one woman dead, 60-year-old Lori Gilbert Kay has perished, as well as 3 injured, a young girl, the rabbi himself, and an uncle to that young girl who also moved here from Israel. Sarah?
And Michael, just very briefly, tell me, how much concern is there in the Jewish community that there may be more attacks following these?
Yeah, it's hard not to have that feeling. And, you know, again, 6 months to the day after that shooting at the Tree of Life. And it's not just limited to Jewish places of worship. Mosques have been firebombed. There have been shootings in mosques, not just here in New Zealand, also a church in Sutherland, Texas. These are the Sutherland Springs, Texas. These are the kinds of things that happen now so randomly, but affecting places of worship. That's new. And Jewish community leaders have their radar up now in ways that they hadn't before. Sarah?
Certainly very concerning. Michael Shaw there in San Diego, thank you. In Israel, the culture minister has announced that she's formed a public committee to set new guidelines for the annual Independence Day ceremony after a watchdog report criticised the way tickets are distributed and the honour of lighting a torch is handed out. Today, she revealed the men and women who'll light the iconic Independence Day torches in the official ceremony. Alon Levy has more.
That's the sound of Independence Day. The IDF marching band in formations, rehearsing on Jerusalem's Mount Herzl, a week and a half before a televised ceremony watched by millions across Israel. These are the men and women chosen for the honor of lighting a torch on Independence Day. 12 torches for the 12 tribes of Israel.
It's very big, very exciting, and very emotional.
The theme this year, a salute to the Israeli spirit. Introducing the honorees, Culture Minister Miri Regev said they represent the mosaic of Israeli society, the salt of the earth, who set a personal example with their big aspirations. Colonel Ishai Simantov was paralyzed from the neck down in the 2014 war and returned to command a unit. This elderly woman has 52 great-grandchildren. Kfir Damari co-founded Space IL, the mission that sent the Israeli Bereshit spacecraft to the moon.
Dream on whatever you want. It can be space, it can be other things on Earth. but just do whatever is needed to make that dreams into a reality. You know, in English, the word impossible, I like to say in my lecture, if you break it down a little, you can say that it's actually saying I'm possible. My grandfather came from Morocco and Tunis with not a lot of things, but with a lot of dreams, and I feel that, you know, getting this big honor is also honoring them.
Dr. Hila Hadas is being honoured for promoting mental health as the head of the charity Enosh. She lost her partner and daughter to cancer and set a personal example by ploughing on.
Mental health is everybody's story, and everybody knows at least someone who needs help around this area, and you need to come and seek for help.
This is Rachel Frankel. Her son Naftali was one of the 3 boys murdered by terrorists in 2014, and the grief that swept the country created a sense of national unity she's working with the other 2 mothers to promote, and they'll light a torch together.
Unity is way more than a cliche. It's the ability to stand together in difficult times and to bring some of that into everyday life. The memory of who we were during that summer and what we're capable of, that means a lot.
On the 8th of May, they'll hope the values represented by their 12 torches will inspire a nation. Elon Levy, I24 News.
A marathon to remember in London with 34-year-old Eliud Kipchoge running the second fastest time over that distance in history, recording an incredible 2 hours and 38 seconds. Britain's Mo Farah came in 5th, 3 minutes behind Kipchoge, while Bridget Koskay has cemented her place as the youngest female winner of the event, which drew more than 40,000 competitors. A new Marvel movie, Avengers Endgame, is also breaking records, raking in around $350 million from ticket sales on the opening weekend in the US, while globally it's already taken in about $1.2 billion. A new pinnacle in the area of blockbuster movies, smashing the total revenue from other films such as Skyfall, Aquaman and The Dark Knight Rises. The president of Marvel clearly ecstatic about Endgame's success, calling it the most significant moment in the modern history of the movie business. Now, nearly 500 people left Passover behind to spend 5 days LARPing in the desert. But what is LARPing? Well, it's live action role-playing, which takes us back to medieval times. Emily Francis was in the thick of it at the biennial Castle Forged experience.
Get ready for a challenge that takes a page from Game of Thrones, meaning Dungeons & Dragons and Burning Man. Hundreds of live-action role-playing enthusiasts are competing in the middle of the desert to capture the mineral castle and its magic potion.
We come to battle to feel alive, to win the favor of the gods, to achieve the minerals. And whoever gives me the most, I will bring destruction, and from the ashes, bring a new world.
The apocalyptic Fifth Lord is hoping to lead his troops in the battle against 3 other camps: the Camp of Light, Camp of the Wilderness, and the Iron Empire, led by an Empress.
Pile them up! Glory for the Empress! Glory for our Glory for the Empress!
I really love the fact that you can see women in power positions, especially militaristic camp, that you can have women leading an army. I think that's fantastic. I really love it.
LARPing enthusiasts like Netta Shermister spend months creating their medieval alter egos and intricate costumes.
We like silver and red, so I'm the embodiment of that vision, basically.
The goal of the biennial epic Castle Forged 5-day event is not just to get revenge and to go for blood, but to create pleasure through good sportsmanship.
It's a vacation from yourself. It's the most powerful kind of vacation that you can get. You can win, quote unquote. Say you won, right? The next guy lost, but he had a blast, a much better time than you did. Then who truly won, right?
And after a tough day of battle, enjoy some downtime and bonding in the local town before gearing up for another day of fighting. In the middle of the desert, Emily Francis, I24 News.
And that is all you have time for this edition of I24 News. But of course, we are continuing to bring you all of the breaking stories. So do go ahead and visit us online. That's i24news.tv, and we have all of those stories on all of our social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and of course on Twitter. I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for watching.